It's just a pleasure to be here with all of you. This is an important event. It brings us together. We all care about our communities. I think all communities are smart communities, or at least we all try to be smart. But are we using technology that we're blessed with so that our communities can be more resilient and more sustainable? And that's what we're about. It's an honor for Cityworks to be a part of that with you. I started at the University of Utah, and I wanted to explain just a little bit about the history of Cityworks. I had the good fortune to be the founder of the Digit Lab. Digit Lab was a GIS lab, and it's still there today, and very successful. One of our longtime clients here, Salt Lake City Public Utilities, they had an employee who called me up and said, "Hey, we want you to come down and help us to interface our GIS to our work order system." And my response, "What's a work order system?" I didn't know. I was a GIS person. So I went down there and I found out about the work order system and what it did. And I started to work with some of my really bright graduate students to create an interface between what was then ArcInfo and a CMMS. The only way we could communicate was through the text file transfer protocol, but we pulled it off. It was an amazing thing to watch, that we could do something in the CMMS and highlight it on the map. It's easy to have a match, hydrants or stop signs or trees one-to-one. That's easy to do, to normalize your data. That was easy with points, but it started to break down, and it became very difficult when we looked at area features and linear features. They aren't like points. These are complex features. It's one of the things that set GIS apart. It could do these, in a database, it could model these very complex features and render it as a map. That is not an easy thing to do. Now try and reproduce that in a table structure. It didn't work. Everything we tried to do to resolve that, we still would run into problems. We would run into conflicts. I remember thinking to myself, if I could just do this from the GIS, it would be so much easier. So I started to develop this idea of doing it all from the GIS. Also, technology rolled along. By 1995, we had ODBC drivers, and all the systems moved from a proprietary database to open databases. The ones that became dominant in the market, Oracle and SQL Server, everything was moving to that, and it was interesting. Here, the GIS resided in Oracle or SQL Server, and then the CMMS database of assets resided in SQL Server or Oracle. They were both in the same place. Redundancy. And I thought, let's make this just off of the GIS. And I started to define what it meant to be GIS-centric. No redundancy in the asset database. The GIS would be your asset database. This has since become a best practice. In 1995, this was radical. Nobody did this. Configurable, what that means is that the software I put on top of the GIS had to be configurable to the GIS, not the other way around. It was very common from 1990 to 95 for systems to say, well, build your GIS this way, and then there won't be a conflict of data. Well, I was a GIS person, and you don't build the GIS for another system. The other system should be configurable to the GIS. Non-proprietary. It was very common when vendors would say, build your GIS this way, they would claim then that is their proprietary approach. And that's not very common today, but back then it was. And so in being configurable to the GIS, you can't claim as an outside vendor any kind of proprietary ownership or IP, intellectual property, of how to do the GIS. It's an open system. And other systems need to come in and use the GIS, not just Cityworks, so that we can count on the data, that the data is accurate, that there isn't weird things happening behind the scenes, that the updates and access to the GIS, ArcGIS, the GIS is through the ArcGIS or Esri methods. We don't want to come in some other way to update the GIS. We want to go through the Esri methods. That way we have an assurance that this system that other systems are going to use, not just Cityworks and not just Esri, but other systems will use that data, that the quality assurance is there. So these are important rules. And what's amazing to me, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying this because these things matter. All of these rules still are completely valid today as the technology has moved forward. They are not obsolete. They're still a best practice, GIS-centric. Good friend of mine I've known for all these years, John Prisbella with Wolpert. I like this quote from him about a single asset repository is fundamental. In his experience, this is where CMMS and GIS systems tend to fail and have problems when they have redundancy of the asset repository. That's GIS-centric, a single asset repository. Since 1995, we've seen a lot of changes. Some of the biggest changes started to happen around 2007, 2006, 2007, 2008, as the world moved as we moved off of a desktop type of environment to first a browser, and then that turned into a cloud platform, services-oriented architecture. About 2010, 2011, we became really focused on this. And we came up with this architecture. I was interested in making sure that the GIS-centric paradigm could be moved into the new technology of service-oriented systems. All of our development since then has been guided by that illustration. And it has turned out that just like GIS-centric, this vision of what platform is has proved to be exactly right. In every way, this is just like the illustration we made in 2011. That's what Cityworks has become. There's the platform of Cityworks and ArcGIS. We acknowledge all of the other solutions. And cloud doesn't mean that it just comes from the cloud. It really means a web services architecture. So there's other systems that participate in the GIS-centric platform. And in the end, we go through web services to produce applications that take care of your unique workflow needs. That vision we developed in 2011 proved to be right on. What we have become now is this dynamic web GIS-centric system. These rules of GIS-centric that we developed in 1995 are still valid, but we have added to it. We didn't replace it, we just added to it. Now the web map is becoming increasingly important. And also single sign-on. If ArcGIS Online is your identity storehouse, or if Portal on premises is your identity storehouse, Cityworks needs to recognize that. A system of record is the core. Authoritative data, asset repository, system of record, tracking the things you're doing. It's key. And you enhance that by getting it out into your whole organization so that it becomes a system of engagement. You get everybody involved, and your citizens, all of your staff, all this input that comes in, and you'll see that these things really matter. Why does it matter? Because as we have a system of engagement, then we have a system of insight. We're making better decisions. We're planning better. We are doing things better for our community. GIS-centric web services, web GIS, we call that the web GIS-centric platform. It also involves what our partners bring into it. Modeling and documents and financials, SCADA, productivity tools, risk, community engagement, life cycle. All those things are brought in to this whole through this architecture that we have and that we share with Esri and our partners, so that you can benefit your communities, make better decisions, spend money more wisely, respond to emergencies in a better way. Here's an example. Hurricane Mathews, big deal, right? It was the fate of many communities. they were wondering what would happen with that massive hurricane that went up the East Coast a few months ago. And we saw these web maps coming out. This one was neat because it was using earl to nearly real time publish information that was flowing into Cityworks and Esri. It was using earl to publish that information out onto a web map. And then they also tied it into ArcGIS Online to create a heat map. And the whole purpose was to get an idea of what was happening with all this information flow in and put it onto a map that was dynamically they were able to share with the organization and elsewhere so that they could respond to this catastrophic emergency. The web map and having that timely information, system of engagement, updating the system of record to have a better system of insight made a huge difference. Today, we have this amazing technology that allows us to better serve our community by getting that information into our system of record and then responding to it in an intelligent way with a system of insight. And we saw that with Hurricane Mathews. Perhaps nothing like an emergency causes us to focus and do amazing things. These things we do also help us through our daily servicing and maintaining our communities. It's very gratifying to see this coming together, and it really will help our communities be more resilient and more sustainable, or as often is said, smart communities. I want to introduce Becky Tamashasky.
Thank you, Brian. As Brian illustrated, the power of the web map with earl is critical for many of our client organizations. And we have some other images that we'd like to provide to you today where they've shared how they're leveraging this as part of their daily workflows. I'd like to start off with one here that was shared with us from the city of Miami Beach, Florida. And it's illustrating how residents are going ahead and they were calling in reporting issues with standing water. And this helped the city to go through and target their mosquito spraying and abatement processes in terms of combating the Zika virus. We have images here from the city of Longview, Texas, in relation to PLL. And they're going through and reporting in real time updates both to citizens and to contractors of the locations of construction and zoning permits that are taking place throughout the city. The city of Louisville, Texas shared this one with us. I think it's a great one. It's very colorful, but it's showing the location of all their AVL vehicles. And for them, this is going back and also tied to and representing the location of their work management activities that are going on in the city. This one from Grand Rapids, Michigan is illustrating the location of the road closures. And not only is this information helpful to their citizens and internal staff in terms of planning work activities, but it also helps delivery services as they're coming into the city to be aware of road closures in terms of ensuring their on-time delivery processes. And then in addition from Grand Rapids, we have information here that they're providing back in terms of the location of right-of-way activities. This information is showing construction, utility work, special events, and this can be shared out internally as well as back to their citizens just to make them aware of the locations of these activities and how it might interfere with their traffic and driving around. And this one is actually Sumter County, Florida. This one is really powerful, this series of images here. Due to their location, they've had multiple FEMA events. So they're dealing with Tropical Storm Colin in some of these images and also with Hurricane Matthew. And in both those cases, they've gone through and used Cityworks projects to track all their work costs that were part of the recovery and management process. This all fed into their FEMA reimbursement process, and they were really critical in terms of how this earl was powering that data and allowing them to collect the location of those activities to ensure a faster response back for FEMA. Continuing on here with Hurricane Matthew, we have images of Gainesville, Florida. And similarly, here is the recovery and management process and how Cityworks was critical with the work orders and that cost tracking and the locations so they could go through and target and focus in on those areas for the recovery. And likewise with Horry County, South Carolina. This is right next to Myrtle Beach, and you can see here we have some issues that are coming in from residents that are reporting locations of street flooding and damage, and we're providing this information back to the county so they can target and respond with their crews more efficiently. And then I'm going to return back here to St. Johns County. And as Brian mentioned, the power of the web map in terms of this data being pulled back, not everybody's aware. He mentioned earl, that's the enterprise URL. but it's allowing them to take that data from Cityworks, from any saved search that you might see. And as these images showed, we were covering here relations back to public works, permitting activities, and emergency management. And so it's not just in the emergency management issues, but this is the one that we really want to illustrate here today. And to help provide more information from the front-end user experience of how this data was captured and these web maps were used to power the recovery process, I'd like to invite to the stage Tom Tibbets and Rocky Agbunag from St. Johns County.
Thank you, Becky. 8 weeks ago, St. Johns County was struck by Hurricane Mathews. It required a large and immediate response and recovery for the county. To help this recovery, Rocky's Public Works Department and my utility department developed immediate and time-saving solutions using Cityworks and ArcGIS. The storm had damaged trees with winds, impacting water lines, roads, and cutting off power. The storm pushed water inland. A surge 8 feet above sea level came through, damaging structures. Utilities had to immediately return to regular water services and to ensure that the public health, support, returning evacuees, and ease the community stress in order to do so. We had to overcome the fact that we had been hit by that surge in the wind. We had many broken water mains, 60,000 customers were without water, and we had over 200 sewer pump stations that didn't have power to run. Cityworks managed our response. It tracked our work orders, and it reported in for reimbursement and to help manage through the process. Call center staff supported our tickets and our field crews. Our field crews updated the labor, equipment, and material that we need to know throughout the storm. Within 24 hours, emergency crews had stabilized and returned water services. Within 48 hours, crews had completed emergency repairs and manually pumped out the sewer systems. Within 72 hours, management provided their initial damage assessment estimates. During the storm, we had to manage our water outages and publish boil water notices. Cityworks Search provided the water line repairs, replacements, and water turnoffs, and this was shared through our compliance manager to review through eURL and through ArcGIS. Data was easily exported and published to ArcGIS Online so that our public-facing boil water notice map could be updated. Just 5 days after the storm, our new challenge was to manage and report 24 sanitary sewer overflows caused by the storm surge, and also through the power outages at our pump stations. A Cityworks search again of our work orders and our manhole overflows and our sewer cleanouts was used and shared with staff to review sites. Data was easily exported and published to ArcGIS Online for updating with crucial information, and also for our water sampling to share with our agency, the state, and the public. Just 1 week from the storm ended with our insurance adjuster admiring our process and signing off on it. Our hurricane response solutions were GIS-centric on flexible Cityworks and ArcGIS solution platforms. This helped us quickly convey crucial information throughout the storm. With each hurricane, we learn and prepare for the next. To help with this process, we created this time slider to share throughout our departments and tie information together. So what I'd like to do is just take some time to tour 1 week's worth of hurricane impact to St. Johns County. The storm starts out slowly enough with preparation, and what we're going to do is we end up turning off water to our entire barrier islands, which will be on the ocean side. You start to see work orders coming in green, and you start to see our water outages going out as we publish these out to the water outages sites. Boil water notices are activated because there's still pressure in the system, and you start to see a lot. We're really picking up with the storm now. All of our pump stations just went out along the barrier islands because they lost power. We've got work order crews working throughout the weekend, 16-hour days on Saturday and Sunday. And a very manic time, so we're going through this. We have work order crews throughout. We have a lot of inland problems. We start doing water sampling at our SSO sites to make sure that we can get those levels down and meet state compliance. We start doing damage assessments to our 400 facilities so we can prepare this. This is all done with 1 week, and the only way we were to accomplish this is using fast, flexible tools like ArcGIS and Cityworks. We're able to stay on top of the storm, keep our customers happy, and keep everything running within those first 7 days and continue on. It's a pleasure to tell our story, and I'd like to pass on to the other side of our county, Public Works with Rocky.
Thanks, Tom. The first responders were called upon during Hurricane Mathews as it slashes along the East Coast. Our Public Works staff, along with other first responders, were prepared to assassinate damage and implement any response during the storm. Seeing a Category 4 storm coming our way made me kind of second-guess volunteering at the EOC. But no matter how chaotic it was going to be, and no matter how many calls we were going to receive, I was confident our public works staff could handle this chaos. They have been using Cityworks for over 10 years now, and the system's been used over other storms and other emergency events. You can say the system's been battle tested. Since we've done this before, setting up Cityworks project is the first step to prepare for the storm. This project will be assigned to all service requests and work order related to this event. We've even learned from previous Cityworks conference that we can set up an XML with a scrolling message constantly reminding our users to attach the Hurricane Mathews project. At the EOC main line, we started receiving a lot of calls. So we quickly realized we could actually use the web mapping application using ArcGIS Online and leverage the Cityworks eURL to assist the call takers. This helped them identify all and locate the calls that's been dispatched to our public works staff. The main damage caused by hurricane was due to severe wind and high storm surges. Although the historic city of St. Augustine did not suffer major damages, there were many homes that didn't fare too well, and tree debris were everywhere. The county quickly started the debris management program, and areas identified with higher concentration of debris were prioritized. Using Cityworks and all other inspections that was done in the field, many forms of ArcGIS Online were used as various map journals and map series, and even clustering using Cityworks service requests with geocoded location, and along with AVL system were used for this map series. Operation dashboard were used to identify remaining debris collected by a mobile workforce. The main goal with this map series is to provide awareness to the county's recovery efforts and also to keep the citizen informed. Our next step is the FEMA reporting and reimbursement process. Using Cityworks labor and material information, as well as the equipment, we can actually go through the proper process for all the requirements. While we present our story to you this morning, our public works staff are still busy at work on restoring our community back to its natural beauty. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocky and Tom.